Hey, welcome back, Rise Up in Real Estate, Rise Up Nation. We are here for another episode of Rise Up in Real Estate podcast. And as we've been doing all the way through season 4, we're churning through talking to real estate practitioners, people that are in the living rooms and in the cars every day talking to people. And we're from coastal South Carolina. It's where our brokerage is. And we've just been churning through all the guests for the year. And I'm excited to introduce this guy to you because not everybody that I've had on my show that I know real well, and I don't know Mike that well. So I'm excited to get to know him. I'm going to ask him some questions and just dig in a little bit. But Mike Casper, I appreciate you being here. It looks like it's a sunny day in coastal South Carolina. Welcome to the show, and thanks for taking the time to be on here. I appreciate you.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you. Thank you.
So we're going to go back and I want Mike to tell his story just a little bit. Like, tell me, Mike, where you were born. First of all, Casper is your last name. Is like the ghost, Casper.
Yes, sir.
If anybody needs to find you on social media or wherever, once you've told your story, they want to connect. But tell me where you were born, like where you're from, how you transitioned down here to coastal South Carolina, and then how you got into this crazy world of real estate that you're in now.
So I'm born and raised from the north, where I'm sure most of our office is from. I'm from Eatontown, New Jersey. I lived there for the first 25 years of my life. Both my parents were born and raised there. My grandparents were pretty much came over. They went to New Jersey. Most of my grandparents right from Italy. My last name's Casper, but it actually used to be Di Gaspero. And when they switched over, that's like kind of like a lot of my background. Like I'm from Jersey, but I have those Italian roots, and just that hard working, just came over and just right to work, and just you couldn't not eat anything that was on your plate kind of background. Just hard working, put your nose down and work kind of family. And we, as a kid, we always used to vacation. We would go to Lake George in New York, go to the Adirondacks, and then I think my mom told me it was the one year it didn't work out to go to Lake George, and we're like, let's go to Myrtle Beach. And we got a trailer and we came here, and the first place we went to was a Lakewood campground in Surfside. And for the first, I want to say it was like for a good 8 to 10 years, we were coming here during Easter time, which is coming up now. And we were coming here every year. We would go to Surfside, we go to everywhere around there, and we just loved it. And my parents' dream always was to move here when my brother and I graduated from college. And then we kind of like put it on the back burner. We didn't come here too long, and then COVID happened, and I was with my girlfriend, who's now my fiance, and it was around May 2020. We were going crazy at home, and that was around the time when I discovered real estate, because I always was thinking, I never really knew what I was going to do. I went to high school, and I graduated there. I played baseball mostly. I went to a community college, and I genuinely didn't know what I was going to do. I thought about being a gym teacher, because that was the best subject I was good at. I thought about being a health coach, being a personal trainer, and none of it really stuck. I did all the schooling and everything, and none of it like really felt good. And then my fiance, whose grandfather, who's passed away now, but he was an excellent real estate agent. I've always been told that he was a part of what was called at his office at that time, the $1 Million Club, just a hustler. He actually did appraisals too, which I don't know how you could do that now, but he managed to do appraisals and real estate. And she mentioned it to me. I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. And I was like, okay, you work on your own and create your own hours. I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. And then kind of just put it in the back burner. During COVID, we were just watching shows or doing whatever to pass time. We came here in May of 2020 to Barefoot, where her parents have a houseboat. Spent like 3 weeks here, kind of just hung out. We got called back to go home. And on our way home, we were like, I could live there. And my fiance traveled here too and vacationed here as well. So it was like always something in the back of our mind. Like I'm sure a lot of people that move here, like you vacation. It's always that vacation spot. And then all of a sudden it turned into like, whoa, the cost of living isn't as bad. The people are amazing. Like going in a Taco Bell drive-thru and they're calling you sweetheart is not something you experience when you're in Jersey. So everything about it just was awesome. And the opportunity came up a few weeks after we left, and we just took it. We lived in a house trailer, on her dad's house trailer, for about 6 months. Her dad had a house trailer. We lived in the North Myrtle Beach RV resort right on the Intercoastal. And we just fell in love with it. We lived on Forest Brook after that. And now we're in Carolina Forest, and we just love it. We really haven't looked back.
That's pretty cool. So And your dogs don't bother the show at all. I can hear it.
Okay,
You,
good.
this is real life. Like we do this on purpose, where you're sitting in your comfort zone, I'm sitting in mine. You might
Good.
hear, no telling what you might hear with all my kids and pets. So no sweat with that.
I
Don't worry about it
appreciate
at
it.
all. So it's interesting as you tell your story. I like the Italian roots. How do you change your name from what it was to what it is? Like, how did your grandparents do that? I've never heard that happen before.
So there's two really cool things that I've been taught of how it worked. The number one thing was the DeGaspero name, as you could imagine, is a little bit longer to spell. And from what I understand, when you used to receive a check after working, the owner, like say for example, if it was you or Mandy were signing our commission check, you would have to handwrite it. And DeGaspero got cut down to Casper because it was just too much to write. That was the first thing. And the other thing that's really cool about that background as well is, I don't know how it necessarily works. I've never tried to get my name changed, but from what I understand nowadays, you can just kind of do whatever you want. You kind of get it changed. Maybe you go to local courthouse. Back then, and I actually have a copy of it, my grandfather, who would have been actually 91 yesterday, I have a copy of his 12-year-old signature, and everyone in the family that was a D. Gaspero had to get a copy from, I guess, some attorney back then and had to sign saying that that was okay to do because it's a huge, huge deal. And even to the point where my dad told me that when my dad got to a certain age, he was like, Dad, I'm changing my name back to D. Gasparo. And it was just a no go because it took so much for them to change it that changing it back would have almost disrespected that whole process. And so that's always been like a really cool family story of mine. And just like kind of that really does explain my roots a lot of just we just work hard. It does. Hey, you call me whatever you want. I'm going to be here every day.
Yeah, that's cool. I've noticed that about you already. You've jumped right in, and you're always working hard. And now that I know about your Italian roots, you would never know that with your name Casper, but now
Hmm.
you've shared that a little bit. And the other thing is, it's interesting to me, and maybe you use this with clients. You can maybe tell me about this, but you lived the story that a lot of our clients experience. Like this was a vacation place for your family, and you started falling in love with it. And next thing you know, you start looking at property, and something like COVID happens. You go, you know what? Quality of life might be better down there. I mean, how many clients have you been able to relate to with that story? It seems very relatable.
I mean, a ton. And actually, I don't know if you know this, my phone number still has the 732 area code. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had, and I call expires from time to time. And I've even had people that hate me on the phone, and at the end they go, "So you still got that 732 number, huh? You from Jersey?" Next thing you know, there goes 10 minutes of us just getting to know each other. And then instead of them hating me and hanging up the phone, they're like, all right, this guy's kind of cool. Maybe we could build a relationship. And that's happened a lot. And when I'm in that process, talking to people that, like, I've worked with clients from Connecticut. I had a client that I closed with in December that was from Jersey, right in my hometown. Actually, to the point where there was some paperwork that got sent back, and he missed a couple of signatures. And my brother lived so close to him that he was able to get everything signed and help it out in that way. Like, and it's just having that transition because that's usually the first question people ask. They're like, "Oh, you moved from Jersey? Like, what was it like?" And it's always those first three things I feel like I always mention, which is the cost of living is less, the people are amazing, Southern hospitality is alive and well, and the weather. The weather's the biggest thing too. That's a big reason I moved here. It's like, I mean, right now it's March, and even a month ago, I was sitting on my screen porch enjoying myself, and then, I got my buddy sending me videos of the snow, or
Right.
it's usually a good 10 to 20 degrees cooler there, and I mean, God, I just love it here.
Yes, and I love that. Like I'm kind of from the Carolinas, so when I was selling real estate, I heard that story a bunch from clients, but I couldn't relate. You seem like a very relational guy too. Your business is very relational. Is that true? Am I picking up on that as you're talking?
100%. And it's funny when I look back because I passed my test in July of 21. And when I look back at any times that I've really had lulls is when I was focusing more on trying to be a transactional agent, which is just not to my core. I don't even when I envision like the peak of my success, I don't like and like you say, for example, that I've been taught from day one, from the time I sat down with Vince at Starbucks, which is creating your abundant life. and your abundant life may be 100 transactions. My abundant life may be 20. There's the example of the woman that I can't think of, that her abundant life was closing, what was it, 5 or 6 deals to pay for homes in another country.
Right. Right.
That was her abundant life. So my abundant life that I've come to realize now, especially 3 years into the business, is I could close 15, 20 deals, which may not, which to me, like I expect more from myself. But if those were 20 deals where I have people that would rant and rave about me, which every client I have I could call right now and they would be like, oh, Mike's this, Mike's that. And I don't just say that to like to build any sort of accountability. That's just how it is. I had a client call me 2 days ago. We had a closing, we were supposed to have a closing scheduled for Friday, and her mail away, I don't know if you've ever even heard this. I know you've been involved in a ton of transactions within our office and talked to tons of agents. The mail away, the plane got delayed for a technical issue. And the sellers wanted to close that day like any seller would. And I totally understand they were a bit frustrated that we were going to have to wait over the weekend, but it was a technical flaw with the plane. So my client calls me and says, Mike, I think it's at the UPS office where you are, because she was in Colombia. Can you go check and see if it's there? And at the drop of a hat, I'm like, of course, I can go there right now. And she was like, thank you so much. Oh my God, you're amazing. And she must have thought I hung up. And my fiance was next to me. She was getting ready to go somewhere. And all you hear is her talk to someone else and go, God, he is a saint. And I'm like, I just kind of laughed and I just hung up the phone. I didn't want her to think I heard her. But that's just, that to me brings so much more joy than if I was to get, say, 100 deals. Because at the end of the day, like I've never acquired $1 million, but I always hear people say, when you acquire that $1 million or that thing that you thought you wanted so bad monetarily, you get to the end of it and you're kind of like, oh, life is still, I still got to wake up tomorrow, or the coffee's still going to taste the same, or my car is still going to drive 0 to 60 in enough amount of time. So you're exactly right. I've come to learn that. And the only time I've had trouble is when I try to be more transactional. Whereas now, let me give the best service possible and just have a group of people that will just rave about me. And I think that really gives me a lot of feeling of being complete in this business for sure.
Yeah, that's excellent. So, I mean, if somebody's going to call you a saint, it might as well be while your fiance is listening. That doesn't
Right.
hurt,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Amen to that. Yeah.
Hey, the other thing I wanted to say is, like, tell me what it means or what it feels like to you, or how can you tell when you're becoming more transactional versus relational? What things change about the way that you act or the way that you feel? I don't know. What you sound like you might know.
So I can give a perfect example. I have called expireds in the past, and when I when I'm thinking too transactional, or like I want to make money first, and that's the forefront of my mind, which I'm not afraid to shame. I'm like, all right, I need to get money, especially because I work in the restaurant part time as well. So I'm like, having this mindset of like I want to just do real estate full time. And the times when I've tried to be transactional is times when I sit down and I pull up the software to make calls, and I make the mindset of I'm just going to call for 4 hours, or I'm going to try to call as many people as I can until my head explodes. And I've done that. And then I'm sure most people listening would guess, I burn out really quick. Like I could call 4 people, 4 hours, 6 hours, and then all of a sudden it's like, I just completely stop and I'm thinking too transactionally. Or if a client needs help, see, the thing is, it's so weird because I know when I've learned anything about having more transactions and making calls, you have to time block. But I've always had this weird feeling like I don't like time blocking because, like, for example, when my client calls me Friday, if I'm in the middle of a call session and I can't be that saint for her to go to the UPS, then I don't get that. I don't get to continue to build that relationship with her. But then it's also a double-edged sword because how else am I going to get business? But the thing is that really, I think why Remax really is my home is because, and Vince really like screwed my head on right with everything, because I was always thinking, okay, I got to get transactions, transactions, transactions. How many deals can I make? How much can I do this? How many times, if I call this amount, how many? And those are all good. And it definitely is a good groundwork to have in a foundation. But if that's my main focus, I'm going to lose. And what Vince really got into me when I first met with him was focus on the relationship. Make that your number one thing, and it'll all work out. And when you think of it like that, it's like, okay, well, if I'm just focused on the relationship and I genuinely want that, then it doesn't matter if they don't call me back. They just missed out, then that's on them. If they ghost me, then hey, maybe they have found another good agent, but at least I was treating them like a person instead of a transaction.
Yeah,
And
no, good explanation. I like that.
yeah, that helped a lot.
So you've mentioned Vince a few times.
Mhm.
It sounds like personal development might be important to you. Talk a little bit about that. Like, what do you do in your personal life for development and in your business life? What do you work? What are you working on? How do you show up in that way?
Well, it's funny. Like I thought a lot about this interview, and I would have been remiss to never had mentioned Vince. If it wasn't for Vince, there's no way we would be talking right now. And it's funny because I know that you passed the baton to him, as you used to be the former director of opportunity, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and he has flourished with that, in my opinion. Like I said, there's no way I would be here without his leadership and his communication and showing me that you can be a relationship agent and still do good business. You don't have to be transactional focused. But as far as personal development and everything, it's funny. I grew up my whole life in school hating reading books. I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. And I don't think I mentioned it before, but I have a big baseball background. And to the point where I actually tried so hard to find a baseball league here, couldn't find it. Now I play softball once or twice a week just to get out there, just to play. And I bring that up because the first book I ever that clicked for me, that wait a minute, it's not that I don't like reading books, it's that I'm not reading books that I enjoy reading. And the first book I ever read was The Mental Guide, or The Mental ABCs to Baseball. And that's when it first clicked, like, oh, I don't not like reading books. I only like to read books that I have interest in or things that can help me grow. And then really the voracious reader kind of came out actually around a worse time in my life. It was about like 4 or 5 years ago, and I was just down and out, and I just wasn't in a good place. I didn't know what I was going to do. This was before I found real estate. And the only thing that helped me, because my thing is, and I use this in my real estate world as well, is if I can't figure it out, if I can't answer that problem for my client right now, I will do whatever I can to find it out. So when I was feeling a little depressed, feeling anxious, which was the first time I was having those feelings, I'm like, wait, what's up with this? And then I started reading books like from Daniel Amen, like I think it's like Brain Life or something like that, where he just taught what was going on in your brain. I started reading self-help books like anything from Tony Robbins and Awake the Giant Within. I started reading How to Win Friends and Influence People. Um, Fanatical Prospecting was around more when I got into real estate, but I became almost addicted, and not just the books, but on YouTube, I would look up Tony Robbins, How to Get Out of Your Head, or I would listen to interviews with, there's a guy named Tom Bilyeu, and he would interview all different types of people that all of a sudden taught me, wait a minute, like, there was one guy I remember. I wish I remembered his name, but in one of the interviews with Tom Bilyeu, he said everything's neutral. So, say for example, you and me get the news that we have cancer, and if you react poorly and you're like, "Oh my God, my life is over. I'm never going to recover from this." That's how you chose to react. It was neutral. But then there's me, and say I react, and I'm like, "I can beat this. My mom beat this, or this one beat this, or I just know I'm strong enough that I can beat this." Then I can get through it. And what I realized is everything that was happening to me was just based on how I reacted to it. So it didn't matter if I got horrible news or good news. It's all just, how are you going to react to it? And that helped me a ton, just going on YouTube, learning from people that have been through it. And then and then what helped me and gave me comfort was, okay, if these people have been through it, if these people can coach people how to get through these things, then of course I can too. And that has been huge for me. I mean, people like Tony Robbins, David Goggins, have really, really helped develop me into a person I am, which when you get that kind of groundwork, it's hard to fail.
Oh yeah, yeah. Do you watch a lot of TV, or does it sound like you do mostly?
A little bit, cable, sometimes cable. I mean, it depends. If it's a good show, I'll probably watch it.
Does your fiance ever say, "Let's
He is
stop talking about"?
totally lying
Yeah,
because
look at there.
he watches Love is Blind
Okay,
with me.
well,
There we go. Now, I mean, what's her name, by the way? Remind me.
Brianna.
Hey, Brianna, nice
Brianna.
to see you.
Nice to meet
I mean,
you.
this is real life. There's the brains behind the beauty, or the beauty behind the
That's right.
brains, or both, right?
Oh,
That's
thank
funny.
you.
So when's the wedding, by the way? Put
We're
somebody on
hoping
the spot.
we're hoping September.
September.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
she is not a big wedding girl. She does not want to have 15 bridesmaids. She does not want to have 100 people telling us what to do. She's like, let's go here. It's actually the best plan that God would bless us with, that we would really like to do, that we really prayed for, is I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's called A Pretty Place in Greenville.
Yeah, yeah.
So that place, so if anyone doesn't know, it's if you look it up, it's beautiful, it's breathtaking. It's hard to even put into words the picture. It looks like a screensaver, where there's just this big cross, and in the background are these mountains, and it is just breathtaking. And to the thought, the only thing that's excited us when we talk about getting married, which of course, if you go to an island, or Aruba, Bahama, whatever, it's nice, it's pretty. But for us, we have a God-centered life, and having pictures to look back on where it's me, her, and a cross is what it's all about for us. And you know, I've said recently, like, as soon as I get a few, a few more closings, maybe a little bit big ticket one, it'll work out. And I say things like that, and then I just give it to God, and I have the faith for it. And it's funny, that contract that I mentioned before, where my client called me a saint, we had just closed on Friday. It wasn't even, we might not have even made it to Monday, which was yesterday, and somehow we made it. And just over the weekend, I have been showing these clients in Pawleys Island, Georgetown, Murrells Inlet, for about the last couple of months, and they're high ticket clients, and they're great people to work with. Those are another example of clients that we've had been driving around a few weekends, and at one point we stopped at one of the listings, and they said, Mike, you're driving too much. I don't care what you say, because I'd already said no twice. They're like, get in the car. We're taking you out to lunch. We're pausing the showings, and then we'll do the rest. But you're driving with us. And I was like, all right, I'll get in if you're gonna twist my arm. And those are the clients that could very well provide for us to do some of the things that we really prayed for. So at the end of the day, whether the closing happens or not, it is what it is. I'll have more clients. I'll have more people to work with that could, potentially rave to the next person to build more of my pipeline.
Yeah. So two quick things. I like this conversational style, and I appreciate you. Normally the listeners will know that I go down a certain path with everyone, but you and I are taking a little bit of our own journey, which I love. And Brianna made me think of something when she came on, that I've watched Love is Blind too, and I'll admit to you, she just embarrassed you on the show, and this will be on YouTube for the whole world to see, that I have watched every single season of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. Mandy and I can't stop watching it. Like, it's so silly, the show is, and it's so not, I don't know if it's real or not, but we're like hooked on it. And I've seen Love is Blind. It's like the Netflix version of The Bachelor, kind of. So no sweat there. But tell me, I'm a man of faith. You're a man of faith, and I know you guys have a cross-centered life. And the listeners should know that it's never my intent in my life to push my beliefs on anyone. But I want to ask you, with your permission, I want to ask you a couple of questions about that, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah. So I've always been curious in my own life of how to describe this, and I want you to help me with how you do it. So you're a faith-based guy, which means, I mean, faith is believing in something that you cannot see, like the promise of tomorrow, or the what's coming for you. And I don't know specifically your faith. We haven't talked that deep about it, but when you're a faith-based person, it's easy to not work. It's easy to rest back on the faith and just say everything's going to be all right. But you come across as a guy that is very faithful, but yet you're busting your tail to do your part. How do you reconcile all that in your mind? I know it's good. Maybe you're going to say it's the Italian in me that does it, but what is it that makes you not just rest? You have a nice, healthy balance of both, it sounds like.
So there's two things that come to mind right away. The number one thing, I think, is kind of just, I just lost it for a second, but I do remember I think the biggest thing is oh, sorry, I just lost it for a second. Let me think.
That's okay. It was not a question
Yeah,
that we talked
we can go
about.
back to.
Yeah, we can start over.
Oh, no, that's okay. Yeah, you could start. Yeah, ask me again.
Yeah. So tell me how you
Oh, I
balance.
remember. I remember.
Yeah, go ahead. Faith, and my editor can handle that. So faith versus hard work.
So the two first things that come to mind is, and I just heard this the other day, is God can't move a parked car. So many times I've parked my car and just thought God'll do it for me. Like he's got my back. But I realized, wait a minute, he's not, God is in control. And I know that for sure. But I also know that he gives us our own free will. So I can't just sit back and go, God, let me get 30 deals this year and then just park that car and hey, God's going to provide for me. He doesn't move a parked car. And that really hit me hard when I heard that the other day. And it really stuck with me. And I just feel like the thing is, it's really interesting. I've talked about how there's been lulls in my business because I was thinking too transactional. My fiance Brianna is here as well. That is the best part about having a partner that is God centered, in my opinion, because God also says in the Bible that she, like a good wife, is our reward for all our earthly toil. So anything bad that happens, she's our reward for it. And I know she's my reward for it because anytime I've had a struggle, she's like, babe, you don't know. Like, and I make these calls to her when a client doesn't stops answering, or they were a good client, didn't work out. I make these calls to her when I made those 200 calls and I did 4 hours of calls and nothing happened. And she's like, you don't know what God has in store for you. He sees it, but you don't. And you can't reap those benefits. You can't get those rewards of that hard work unless you continue to keep going. And it's funny. When I got started at Remax, it was the end of May of last year, and I for 2 months painstakingly called every single day. And I was thinking about this the other day when you initially sent the list of everything that we would talk about. And the biggest thing that I think back to the first 2 months with Remax, and I was calling constantly, and I have it on my standing desk in the office. I have a few quotes, and one of them is, "At the right time, I, the Lord, will make it happen." And for 2 months, I couldn't get a person to list with me, to even have an appointment. And I was really struggling. And I just was reminded of that verse of, "At the right time, I, the Lord, will make it happen." And that was like my mantra every day. I will make it happen. At the right time, at the right time. And there was one day I was struggling so bad, and I was praying at my desk, and I was like, God, I'm trying so hard. Like, can you just help me out? And I am not kidding. The next call I made, it was a person that I talked to, and I got 3 listings out of it. And that was just from trusting that it would happen and knowing that I'm putting in the effort, and it'll pay off. And you just, the thing is you can't, like, I've learned really recently, I can sit here and say, "Oh, I have faith." But if I spent this whole weekend worried that that deal that I mentioned wasn't going to close because the mail didn't come in right, that's not real faith. And that has really, really, really transformed my business, because now when I talk to people, I don't have commission breath, because if they don't list with me, if they don't buy with me, if they don't have that appointment with me, it's all good. God will provide someone else for me, and it'll work with them. So that has really helped me a ton.
Yeah, that's good. You've got a great partner. And I think that's cool that you can make that phone call, and it sounds like she's the one with the rock solid faith,
Hmm.
believing in what you haven't seen yet will come to pass. And I should mention too, you've just painted a perfect picture of what I was getting at. Like you said the prayer, you had the faith, and yet you made the next phone call.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, you did both. You had the
Hmm.
faith and you also acted. If you wouldn't have had, what if you didn't have the faith and you made the phone call? It would have fallen on deaf ears. If you had the faith and didn't make the phone call, you're not going to get
Right.
anywhere either. So I love that. God can't move a parked car. Don't say that too many. Don't say that too many times, because you might look out in the driveway one day and your car's moved, and he'll say, "Well,
Right.
I can, I
Right.
can. I just prefer
It's
that you
true.
get help with it." So, a couple of
That's true.
questions as we wrap up here, and I appreciate your time today for sure. I think you've said a lot of insightful things, and I appreciate a conversation with someone who's not like, we have not at all talked about what your production level is, how much money you want, what you want to get out of this whole thing. And I think that's exactly how it's supposed to be. So I
Mhm.
appreciate that. But tell me 2 more questions. Tell us a book. You've already told, you just rattled off like 5 or 6 a minute ago, but what is a book that you could recommend to the listeners that might help? I'll put it in the show notes for them, and then I'll wrap up with one more question after that.
Sure. So I thought about this question a lot since you initially sent me everything. And the biggest thing on my heart, there's two books, and I would recommend the first and foremost, and I think it's obvious where I may go with this is obviously the Bible.
Yep.
As far as self-help goes, it would be The Compound Effect, and I'll explain why for both. The first one is, I don't know if a lot of people know this, in the Bible, there's 365 times that it says, fear not. And I think it's convenient that we have 365 days in a year, and a lot of people are filled with fear, and God reminds us 365 times to fear not. Don't be fearful. How many times are we fearful that that client's not going to call us back, or that deal's not going to close, or this person is going to ghost us? How many times are we scared when we go to an appointment that it's not going to work out? But every single day he reminds us to fear not. I mean, um, just knowing that there's so many different examples. It's interesting. I've listened to Jim Rohn a lot as another person that's helped me. And I listened to an interview of his a while ago where he talked a lot about his self-help stuff, but he also talked about, like I just said, with fear not, or when you trust in God, you'll soar like an eagle. There's so many different examples in the Bible that just give you that comfort, or give me that comfort, that it's like, I shouldn't be fearful. I should trust. All good things come to those who wait. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. He also rewards us for doing, good deeds, or, whatever it is, but it's not something that I take lightly, when it's like, there's so many reminders and so many ideas to be strong in the Bible. And it's like, even if you don't believe, it's like, you could take some of these lessons in there and take them and apply them to life. In addition to that, self-help books have been an enormous help. I've probably read over 30 or 40 books. I actually, in my office, I have two papers. One is how many closings I have this year, to keep track, so I don't fall by the wayside, or I don't become too faithful where I'm just thinking, like you said, it'll just all happen. And then I also have how many books I've read, because I learned from Jim Rohn that if you read a certain amount of books and you look back in 10 years and you read 1,000 books, do you not think you're going to be smarter? Do you not think you may be at the top of your business? And that has really stuck with me. And so I'm interested to see how this year goes, predicated on how many books I complete in relation to how many closings I have, because I think there could be a direct correlation behind it. And I'm pretty sure I've even read that the top CEOs in the world on average read about 30 to 35 books a year. I remember learning a while ago. And in addition to that, the self-help book that I recommend most that really hit me is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And I believe the reason why that is he teaches just to do those little things, like in real estate. Like I mentioned, I've tried too hard to do these big things and these 4-hour sessions, or 200 calls, or 500 calls. And Darren's advice is just call 50 and hit, like, he doesn't say that, but that's what I got from it. Call 25, but do it every day. Call or do one appointment a week, but just make sure you don't, like, fall by the wayside. And then also he teaches in that book to try to be a little bit different, or try to do something extraordinary, which I've tried to do with my clients. Like I mentioned, some of the things that I'll do, I'll go out of my way to go to help out clients. There was a closing I had when I first started where everything closed and my clients were really pissed that the people left the paint in the garage. And I'm not kidding you, Tad. I left paint in my garage to the point where it actually spilled for a couple months, because I actually didn't even know how to dispose of it. But that's the kind of little things, like, hey, you know what? Oh, I'll take it. I know a guy, but I'm like, I got to figure out something to do with this paint. That's just the kind of guy. I'm like, all right, let me do that. And I think that's a huge book, that if you want to be more focused on doing those little things every day, having them compound, and you realize that sometimes we're too nearsighted in thinking, what can I do in a month? I think Tony Robbins says we underestimate what we can do, or we overestimate what we can do in a year, and we underestimate what we can do in 5 or 10.
Yeah, I like that. It's Compound Effect's one of my favorites. I'd recommend it to every single listener. I think it's life-changing for sure. Last question I'll ask you, then I'll let you get back to Brianna and the sunshine of South Carolina. Tell me, the name of the show is Rise Up in Real Estate. My philosophy behind it when we started the show 4 years ago was to try to find people like you that are ordinary people, but they're doing extra things. So now they're extraordinary. And what is it about your life you think that you do on a daily basis to help you rise up, like, above the mediocrity of everything else? Is there something you do specifically every day to help you do that?
I think a big thing, and we've talked a lot about books, I listen to audiobooks or YouTube almost exclusively. Very rare. Like I like to listen to music, and it's not like I'm trying not to. But when I'm doing mundane tasks, cleaning the house, driving my car, when I'm at the restaurant, when I'm in the middle of setting up for the night for an hour, I don't like to waste those little mundane times, and I like to plug in an audiobook. I like to listen to a real estate podcast. I like to listen to a self-help, a Tony Robbins, of this person or that person. So I think the thing that has helped me rise up is that, because I learned a while ago, the only and it correlates with the compound effect of just being smarter today than I was when I went to bed. And so if I'm plugging into podcasts, audiobooks when I'm doing the mundane and learning, where most people may, just listen to music or indulge, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I think if there's something that helps me be smarter than I was when I went to sleep, it's that.
That's awesome. Mike, I've been surprised, man. You are a well-spoken, very deep, introspective, relational. You're young. You've got a tremendously bright future ahead of you. I'm proud of you that you are putting faith first. I wish you and Brianna all the happiness. I'm confident that you'll be standing right there in Greenville in front of that cross.
Yes,
someday. If anybody on the show wanted to get up with you, like connect with you somehow, maybe they're from Jersey and they want to talk Jersey, or they need some paint. You got some in your garage, maybe. I don't know. Where can they find you? What's the easiest way to connect to you, Mike?
It's everything with my name. So I believe my Instagram is Mike Casper Realtor. Michael Casper on Facebook, Remax Southern Shores. Pretty much just on Instagram and Facebook. I haven't tapped into YouTube too much, but those are really the big parts. And if you if you're not sure if my phone number is right, if it starts with 732, you're probably on the right track.
All right, cool. Well, thank you very much for your time, my friend, and I wish you well in the rest of this year. I can't wait to hear your successes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, hey, that's a wrap, folks. Thank you so much for listening to Rise Up in Real Estate. If you liked hanging out with us today, please find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Rise Up in Real Estate. Also, follow us right now on your favorite podcast host to hear more episodes. We really appreciate you spending some of your time with us. And until next time, let's do each other a favor and all help each other rise up.